You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 595, Friendship 1.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we explore the vast Star Trek universe, one episode at a time, picking apart the messages that were left for us by those who came before. Will we find morals, meanings, and messages, or will it end in a nuclear winter?
This week, Friendship 1, the one where Voyager finds a derelict space probe that stopped by to say hello at a Delta Quadrant planet, only to accidentally unleash hell. Oops.
I'll be right back with trivia, but first here's Norm with all the details on how to reach us.
We'd love to hear from you. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Find us on Facebook at Mission Log Pod and on Instagram and Threads at Roddenberry Podcasts. The conversation always continues in the Mission Log Discord with near-daily live events and 24/7 chat about the topics you love. Get your invitation to our private server by joining patreon.com/missionlog. While you're at it, one of the most important ways to help your favorite podcasts is to leave a 5-star rating and review at Apple or your preferred podcast platform. And remember, your comments could be used on the show. And now here's John Champion recovering the signals from this week's trivia.
All right, let's talk about Friendship 1. We have a story and teleplay credited to Michael Taylor and Brian Fuller. They get the single writing credit here. Now, obviously, we know their work, and they were both most recently credited on Workforce Part 2 in our rewatch. But here's the thing that we always know is true. Other influences help shape the story, and this was no exception. Ken Biller had some say in one of this episode's most important decisions, which was who would be killed off from Voyager's recurring cast. Well, we can talk a little bit more about that the further we get into the story. And this episode was directed by Mike Vehar, and we are firmly in the longest run of Mike's Trek directing career. In fact, he still has more to go on Voyager, as this is episode 12 out of his baker's dozen. He's back one more time before Enterprise. The most recent episode of his that we discussed was The Void. Right, we have a lot of guest stars, so buckle up. We have Peter Dennis as Admiral Hendricks, and Dennis had appeared in Voyager previously, playing Isaac Newton in the episode Death Wish. Back then, we mentioned that he is perhaps best known for his one-man stage work. He performed Bother, the Brain of Pooh, a solo adaptation of A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh stories. Now, born in 1933 in Surrey, England, he worked as a surveyor and accountant before turning full-time to acting. He served 6 years in the British Army before pursuing theater. Now, later, he relocated to the U.S., and he passed away in 2009. Ashley Edner played the young girl Yun. Now, her Trek credit is limited to this Voyager appearance. She was born in 1990 in Downey, California. She's done voice work in addition to her on-camera roles. She was May in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and she performs a variety of additional voices in Monsters, Inc. Lots of commercials as well. Credits for her include spots for McDonald's, Mattel Toys, Neosporin, Purina, Toyota, so much more. Barry Hockwald plays Bryn. Now, side note here, Bryn is a character named in the script, but not on screen. She is the pregnant woman who Tom helps later in the episode. Now, Barry is from New York, and her Trek credits spread across series. She was in Deep Space Nine as Elizabeth in Explorers. Here, of course, she is Bryn, and she will be back for Enterprise. Now, on TV outside of Trek, Barry has guest appearances on The Practice, CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, Desperate Housewives, Dr. Quinn, among many others. She also had recurring roles on shows like Party of Five and The Practice. And on the theater and education side, well, Barry earned a BFA in acting from Syracuse University, did graduate work at the American Repertory Institute for advanced theater training. She co-founded the Florence International Theater Company, where she ran educational and community programming in Florence, Italy. And she is now artistic director of the Global Theater Project, a nonprofit focusing on cross-cultural theatrical work and global citizenship. Now let's talk about Ken Land. He played Varen. This is his only Trek credit to date. He's appeared on series like Judging Amy, Law and Order, SVU, Malcolm in the Middle, and in film and TV movies like 44 Minutes and North Hollywood Shootout. Now, Ken has a stage and Broadway pedigree as well. He performed in the 2010 revival of Promises, Promises on Broadway. That puts Ken among the other Broadway actors who appear in The Gilded Age. Yes, he is in season 3 as Arterton, the episode called What Will the Papers Say? John Prosky plays Otrin, and John's father was the well-known character actor Robert Prosky, a longtime fixture in stage, TV, and film. Now, his one other Trek credit is a guest spot on DS9. He played Brethaw in For the Cause. Across TV and film, John's credits are extensive. NYPD Blue, ER, The West Wing, X-Files, Grey's Anatomy, Magnolia feature film, and he was in AI, Artificial Intelligence, I think an underappreciated movie. He was also in Bowfinger, Nutty Professor, Gods and Generals, and many, many others. Finally, let's say hello so we can say goodbye to Josh Clark as Lieutenant Joe Carey. As you may remember, he is from Maryland. He is a veteran of stage and screen. On Broadway, his credits include Execution of Justice, The Man Who Came to Dinner. He played the March Hare in Alice in Wonderland. Now, on Star Trek, think back, he actually showed up for the first time in TNG as an unnamed tactical officer in the episode Justice. And on Voyager, his run as Carey spans 7 full episodes, going all the way back to Caretaker. Outside of Star Trek, Josh's TV resume is broad. He's got guest roles on Ellie Law, Cheers, Millennium, Babylon 5, and spin-offs, Grey's Anatomy, Modern Family, Westworld, and more. Feature films include Big, Faster, I Am I, McFarland USA, and others, and he is also active in regional and ensemble theater. He was a member of the Antaeus Theater Company.
Welcome to the shallow end of the Delta Quadrant. Brace yourself for my little space probe. Friendship is tragic.
Prologue. On a world in the Delta Quadrant, scientists detect the presence of a space probe. As it gets closer, the probe transmits a signal, classical music, and a greeting of friendship from the people of Earth. Act 1. Janeway takes a call from Starfleet. Vice Admiral Hendricks on the line, and while there's some polite backpatting about Voyager's journey through the Delta Quadrant, he's actually got a job for them. Track down an old Earth probe called Friendship 1, launched in 2067 with all the optimism and arrogance of early warp-era humanity. The probe was meant to share culture, technology, and a warm hello from Earth. Then it vanished. And lucky for Voyager, it disappeared somewhere in their neck of the woods. With their first official Starfleet assignment in 7 years, Janeway assembles senior staff. The search is on. 5 days later, still no sign, but Harry's been tweaking the math and thinks he's found a lead. There's a titanium signal on a nearby planet, but there's also heavy antimatter radiation obscuring the surface. Janeway sends an away team, Chakotay, Tom, Harry, Lieutenant Joe Carey, and Neelix, all due for a pit stop in sickbay first. You remember Joe Carey, right? He of the punchable face. He's going to be engineering support on this mission. Enter B'Elanna. She wants in, but she's 6 months pregnant, and the planet's atmosphere is basically a death sentence for a developing fetus. Tom talks her down, and she insists that the next time, he's carrying the baby. The Delta Flyer punches through rough skies, descending toward a planet devastated by a nuclear catastrophe. The cities are in ruin, and no signs of life. But from a hidden vantage point, a man in a radiation suit watches. Act 2. Suited up on the surface, Chakotay and Harry make a chilling discovery: dormant antimatter missile silos capable of triggering the nuclear winter surrounding the planet. Meanwhile, in a cave, Tom, Neelix, and Carrie find pieces of the Friendship 1 probe, but before they can recover anything, they're ambushed by the locals, who don't show up on tricorders, but do show up heavily armed. Back at the flyer, Chakotay and Harry return to find one of the natives playing stowaway. He lashes out when Harry startles him, and Chakotay stuns the intruder with a phaser. But then the real fireworks begin. Antimatter weapons start slamming into the area. Chakotay's only play is to retreat and get the flyer back to Voyager, leaving 3 of their own behind. Tom, Neelix, and Carrie are roughed up pretty good by their captors until a man named Varen calls off the beatdown. He's the leader, and he's got questions, mostly about who they are and why they've come. Tom explains they're here for the old Earth probe, which is when Varen makes it clear that the probe brought nothing but death, and they're a little late to help. Janeway debriefs Chakotay until a transmission comes in from the surface. Varen appears on screen and wastes no time. Earth ruined his world, and now it's Voyager's job to fix it. Either they relocate his people to a new planet fast, or he starts executing the hostages. Janeway has 3 hours to make up her mind. Act 3. Janeway asks Tuvok to start scanning for M-class planets, not because she's capitulating, she just wants options. Later, the captain and Chakotay check in on the man they found on the flyer. His name is Otrin. He's a scientist, and he was trying to access Federation tech to undo a planetary-scale disaster. Turns out Friendship 1 introduced his people to antimatter, and they ran with it, right into a containment failure that poisoned their world. Otrin believes Earth sent the probe to bait them into self-destruction. Janeway assures him they're not here to conquer anything, just to clean up a very old mess. Meanwhile, in the bunker, Carrie's badly hurt, and Tom wants to treat him, but a local woman says absolutely not. They talk, and Tom figures out she's pregnant, her 4th. The first 3 didn't survive. Tom shares that his wife is also expecting, and that the best doctor in the quadrant is standing by on Voyager. It gives her a moment to think, but she turns away knowing she shouldn't be talking to him. Back on the ship, Janeway finds the nearest habitable world 132 light-years away. At 17 trips, moving all 5,500 survivors, it would take nearly 3 years. It's not completely out of the question, but Tuvok suggests rescuing Tom, Carrie, and Neelix by force. Janeway's not ready to add military invasion to the list of grievances against Earth, not unless there's no other way. In the meantime, the doctor prepares to treat Otrin by using some of Seven's nanoprobes to stabilize him. Janeway drops by to ask a little more detail about Otrin's work to undo the radiation damage to his planet's atmosphere. Back on the surface, Neelix and Tom try to connect with a little girl by offering her a toy, but Varen snatches it away, convinced it's some kind of trap. Neelix attempts diplomacy, even sharing the story about losing his own family on Rhinax. Varen isn't moved. He dismisses Neelix back with the others. As a final attempt, Janeway offers food and medicine and an offer to repair their planet's atmosphere in exchange for a single hostage. Varen agrees, sort of. Carrie sets up the transport enhancers and is just about to beam out when Varen pulls a weapon and fires. "Oh my God! They killed Carrie! You bastards!" Voyager beams up the body. No deal. Act 4. Janeway isn't budging. She tells Varen that murdering her crew won't get him any closer to relocation. Varen counters with more threats, and Janeway plays along. She agrees to transport his people, but insists the systems weren't built for a mass evacuation. She needs time. He gives her 1 hour. Janeway ends the call and immediately pulls Chakotay into the ready room to plan a different kind of response. In sickbay, Otrin's treatment is working. With Seven's help, the radiation damage is starting to reverse, and she makes a pointed remark that his people could also use a little political regeneration, maybe some leadership with a more open-minded, scientific point of view. Back in the bunker, the pregnant woman goes into labor. This time, she asks for Tom's help. The baby is born, but he's not breathing. Tom uses a cortical stimulator to bring the child back, and the mother's perspective may be changing too. Just in time, the Delta Flyer makes its return. Varen assumes that he's captured Tuvok, but the guard is actually the doctor in disguise. Tuvok is playing along and then gets his phaser from the doctor. A nerve pinch and a quick stun sweep later, all the guards are down and the tables have turned. Tom and Neelix are free. Before beaming out, Tom convinces the new mother to let him take her baby to Voyager. He won't survive long in the toxic atmosphere. Act 5. The newborn is safe in sickbay, but Janeway decides that he'll be better off with his mother, along with a shipment of food and medical supplies, and then they can all nope out of there. Neelix and Tom ask her to consider going even further. After all, Earth did send the probe that sparked this catastrophe. Maybe now's the time to make things right and ask for nothing in return. Down in engineering, Otrin proves it's possible to neutralize the antimatter radiation, and Janeway proposes a bold plan. Fire photon torpedoes at low altitude to disperse the toxins in the atmosphere. It's risky, the blast waves will be massive, but Voyager's shields are modified and the operation begins. Otrin and the baby are sent back to the bunker. From the ground, it looks like the sky itself is exploding. Despite assurances from Otrin, Varen is convinced that this is an attack. He powers up the antimatter warheads, ready to strike back, and Otrin begs him to stop, but he won't listen. Until the woman who just gave birth points a weapon at him. If it means saving her baby, she will kill him. That's all the others need to hear. One by one, the crowd turns on Varen. He tries to claim that he's kept them all alive, but Otrin makes it clear, survival isn't enough anymore. And then, right on cue, a child runs in telling all the others to come see what's happening. Outside, for the first time in years, the clouds are breaking and the sky is clear. Back on Voyager, the mission to recover Friendship 1 is completed, but there is a price. In Carrie's quarters, Janeway and Chakotay look over the model he'd been building, a tiny version of Voyager in a bottle, unfinished. Just one nacelle left. They reflect on the cost of exploration. Whether it's 1,000,000 lives or just one, it's never as simple as the mission. The end.
Fantastic recap, John. Now, I need to be honest with you. It wasn't your highest score, but there was a score.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Recap, yeah. You get a +1 for any kind of South Park reference. So, oh my God, they killed Carrie.
Look,
Really?
Most of our shows do not have South Park references.
No,
the vast majority do not. So that one just felt right.
I tried to find a spot for our album, and I found political regeneration to be very interesting.
Nice.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That can be our Scritti Politti tribute band. So
that is +1. So that is 2 points to you. Last point. And I just love the way that it slides like right into the album name. So it was like one of your last quotes. It was, "The clouds are breaking and the sky is clear." I dig that. Yeah.
That was kind of poetic.
I dig that.
Thank you.
So +3. I think that's a pretty
well. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Score.
I will take those 3 points happily. The clouds breaking and the sky clearing has to be preceded perfectly by the child who runs in. Look, everybody, and actually, I'm going to get to that because I have a note on that in Act 5. So we'll come back to that. Well, look, at the start, I love this probe. I want a model of this. And nice. I love the early nacelles, just like the Phoenix, stuff from Cochrane, who gets name-checked in this episode. Let's talk about that logo a little bit, because I definitely had to freeze frame on that. The blue delta with the little...
the UN crest.
Yeah, the little branches in there. And I wondered, like, okay, so this is pre-Starfleet, pre-Federation.
Yes.
So is it UN, but UN go into space?
Well, you know what? I read a really interesting comment online, and basically it was, these shows weren't meant to be rewatched in this kind of detail, and I understand that. However, I'm surprised with the amount of talent that they have building these models, that it kind of like got slipped in there, because if I may become a little pedantic about this.
Oh, please. If you need to put on your glasses and push them out your nose while you do it, you can. That's fine. Yeah. Okay.
So
there we go. Yeah.
I do like the horizontal red striping. I do like that because it's very reminiscent of the red striping we saw in the original series. And then, of course, when Kirk was, it was pretty much, Starship porngasm when we were watching the refit of the Enterprise and the motion picture. However, Starfleet wasn't founded until 2161.
Right.
Right. So this is about 100 years. Because it was 2067 that Friendship One was launched.
Yep.
So the only thing that can really say about the Delta is that it was just one of those kind of tie-ins where, like, you know what, why not? Because the actual USPA, United Earth Space Probe Agency, and kind of like that forward arrowhead of the NX program.
Yep.
We won't see that until a little bit later. That wasn't until basically the Warp 5 program was launched. So, yeah, I don't want to get too much into, that kind of stuff. But the Delta, we all know, like, the famous history that the Delta was supposed to have been the insignia of Starfleet. And then you had all these different issues with, there was the famous Robert Blackman memo. Yeah. And then, of course, there was in the Mike Okuda technical manual of like the 1980s, the Maroon Manual. It said that after the 5-year mission, the Delta was adopted because it was the Enterprise's personal symbol. And because it was the only ship of the 12 Constitution-class ships to have survived the 5-year mission, Starfleet adopted that in total. That's in that technical manual. So,
well,
just saying.
Hey, look, at the end of the day, you see a logo you like, you take it.
I dig it. Yeah, I dig it. Either way. It's cool.
Yeah.
Right?
It obviously, but also subtly just ties things in. So we're very aware of timeline and Voyager's place, Yeah. So just that conversation that Janeway is having, saying like, we name check the Vaudoir and the reptiles from distant origin.
The Voth?
I love the Voth. Yeah. And I love that kind of thing where we don't need to belabor the point. We can just sort of remind us and remind each other, this is where we've been. And all these things had some impact. She did not get around to Harry Kim getting a glowing VD. That'll have to come later. That's in the personal logs, right?
Oh, how that's to be part of the album now, the glowing VD.
Right, yeah.
There's like a really interesting icon on the far right of the astrometric screen when she's talking to the Admiral, and it looks like it's kind of like the Wi-Fi symbol that we see today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was a good little bit there. And I just like what this news does about finding the probe. I like all the conversation, the excitement around the ship, and a sense of history, and us seeing the schematic in the conference room. Now, naturally, Seven has some snide comment about the Borg, would have assimilated humanity a lot faster had they known, and, clever.
And then Tuvok says it was before, they're talking about the ship, Friendship One. He said it was before Starfleet existed. So, there you had it.
He knows.
Yeah.
He knows. Yeah. It's so nice to see Joe Carey, because it's great when Voyager remembers that there are other crew members who have a story and they have interactions. I mean, can I get a Samantha Wildman or a Tal Celeste or a Vorik or a Baxter?
Right.
Please.
Yeah. It's like they play Rochambeau to see who comes on next. Right?
Yeah.
Rock, paper, scissors, glitter, Spock. So, right. Yes. Yeah. Carey went out on this one. Well, he didn't really win. I mean, he kind of did. He kind of lost.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I like the shot that we get of the Delta Flyer landing on the kind of nuclearized planet, and then that costume that we see, the mysterious figure watching them, kind of reminiscent of Wrath of Khan, right? With all that layering. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very steady Alpha 5. It's almost kind of like you wanted Carey to say, like, this is the garden spot of CTL. So,
right. He would have said it exactly like that. Yeah.
I do like the line about fatherhood regresses the male psyche a few thousand years. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Something about it.
By the way, Tom, speaking of regressing, he just picks up that toy off the ground, and thank goodness it is just a toy, because he had no idea Like, that could have been anything. In another universe, he could have been holding a thermal detonator.
It looked just like that. Actually, I put up my arms just like C-3PO in Return of the Jedi. We all know that particular scene. It's like, hey, look at this. It looks like a toy. If this button, if I push it, what happens? Luckily, music. Here it is, though. It's ironic that the music that's playing is Vivaldi's Spring from his Four Seasons while they're walking around in essentially a nuclear winter. So the juxtaposition is delicious.
Speaking of that nuclear winter, shout out to the effects, because the conditions on the planet, the missile silos, everything that we see there from setting the stage, very impressive, very ambitious. So just from a production end, nicely done.
There's a great music cue at 11 minutes, 35 seconds, and it almost sounds like the motion picture theme when I think it was Tom was wiping away the ash on top of the French one symbol. And when you see this, like,
I noticed that. It's just a couple of beats. And really nice. And I really love the way the intensity builds with all these dramatic moments kind of layering on top of each other. So Chakotay and Harry are under attack. You got the other guys in the cave making a discovery, but also getting attacked. And then Janeway stuck without knowing what to do. Like, it's just a nice way to heighten everything on the way to the end of the act.
Are you saying Chakotay and his peoples intensifies? Is that what you're saying?
They all intensified.
All right. As near as like the Delta Flyer, has it always been broken into like every episode it's in?
You're just constantly. They just put a PIN code on the door or something.
No two-factor authentication exists in the 24th century.
Right. Makeup very good in this episode. When the radiation burns, the kind of changes on the aliens. And I really like this scene between Otrin and Janeway in sickbay, because Janeway's playing it. She's confused. She doesn't know what's going on, but it is always followed up by her desire to learn and know more. Like, it's just it's subtle. It doesn't make or break the episode. It's just a nicely done moment. And I really like Otrin's portrayal here. He's sincere. He's confused. He's skeptical. There are so many layers to what he's going through during the interrogation.
I do like the fact they mentioned that he's kind of like the chief or lead scientist. So the scientific mind is going through this process, and so is Janeway. So it's a nice little, they play off each other in that way. Chakotay says our ancestors sent it being probe 300 years ago to make contact with other species. And Otrin said they did a little more than that.
Yeah.
So I'll put the first pin in this.
Well, okay, and then kind of follow-up question to that, which maybe we'll get into, did the probe specifically have instructions on how to build an antimatter reactor? I mean, Otrin kind of plays it like that. Like, it came here, so we did what we needed to do. We did what it led us to do. I just thought, it's kind of a weird choice. I don't know if realistically we would do that. But again, we can get into the discussions of intention versus outcome.
There are a couple of instances in Voyager in the past 7 seasons where they make it a point that Federation technology or Alpha Quadrant technology has in some way perverted the Delta Quadrant. Ever since, I can't remember who was making the argument for this, but ever since the caretaker brought the Delta, the Voyager into the Delta Quadrant, all of these things happened. The death ship, they call it the Voyager. They're all associated with that particular instance. So this is just another one of those instances, right?
Right. I love Tom saying this about his baby. She has my eyes and her mother's cranial ridges. This whole scene was sad and heavy, especially for an episode of Voyager. But if you're going to lighten it up in any way, that just felt like a natural thing to do.
But I mean, it's kind of like, not that it's anyone's fault, because I think there's a point to this, but when, the character said, my children they're all stillborn. Yeah. It kind of like drives the entire threat of what happened home. I mean, that's just, it was pain. It was, it was very, very hard to watch.
It's heavy stuff, and that does make me have questions about the timeline, about how long ago this planet actually found that probe, but we can get into that later. I did do a little bit of math, though, because we know we have 5,500 survivors on surface, and it'll take Voyager 17 trips to carry them 132 light years. That's about 320 passengers, a little more than 320 passengers on each trip. Voyager's got 140 crew. You nearly double that with the number of passengers, have nearly double the number of crew with additional passengers. So you got, upwards of, you're pushing 500 people to bring on board if you were to do that.
I'm wondering, would you not be able to put them all in the pattern buffer and store all that data and then bring them to some type of planet?
It's a long time to have them in the pattern buffer, but I don't hate that idea.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. I've done it before.
Mm-hmm.
I love this little exchange. 7, I'm unique. Otrin, you certainly are.
Hey-o.
Yeah, it's a good bit. And then Neelix doing his job as ambassador. Really nice. And a great call back to Jetrel with him telling his story to Varen. But man, Varen, just coldly and believably, don't compare your life to mine.
Yeah.
Whew.
Well, I mean,
heavy stuff.
He never saw the Metreon cascade. He never saw what happened, to Neelix's sister. And you know what? I think that's why he really was kind of triggered that way, because, he saw this young girl who was obviously affected by the radiation and she didn't have a future. And he's like, that's just like my sister, or maybe even Naomi Wildman. I can see why Neelix, I had to take a stand. I can see him why he did that. He chose that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We haven't mentioned the costumes yet, but I really like the coveralls Tom and Neelix and Carrie are wearing. I thought those were cool.
Yeah.
And man, poor Joe Carey. I feel like we hardly knew him, but what a way to go. Pretty dramatic.
When you see a Joe Carey, because we haven't seen him forever, you're like, okay. And especially since he's technically redshirt ops from TOS. So we're like, all right. You're not making this one, dude. You're not making it better.
Right. Again, I mentioned the makeup before, but I love the changes in the makeup as we're undoing the damage on Otrin. Just so cool to see that progression.
I love it when Seven says to Otrin, then your people may need a change of leadership, someone more open to new ideas. And that reminded me of when Kirk in the Mirror Universe says to Mirror Universe Spock, in every revolution, there's one man with a vision. It's just one of those kind of moments where you're like, if I can just plant that seed, a space seed, if you will, then you might be able to do something with that,
Yeah. Okay, we talked about the makeup, but what about the animatronic prop of the baby?
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Because we see it in a couple of different ways. We see the stillborn, and kind of blue from lack of oxygen, and then recovered after treatment. That is a great piece of effects work.
I was waiting for the baby to be as soon as it turned white again, or white-ish with the oxygen, that when, Tom was holding the baby, a little lizard tongue would come out. And then the mother would freak out. And then all of a sudden you would hear this.
Yep.
And the greatest cliffhanger ever. You know what I'm talking about if you're from the 80s.
Yes. Nice reveal with the Doctor coming in to use his holographic nature to his best advantage. Love that bit. And then, oh man, I love this Steadicam shot around Tom, Neelix, and Janeway as they're debating what to do in the corridor. Oh, yes, just nice. Love to see director and DP flexing their creativity. And Otrin, once we get most of that radiation burn off of his, or the result of the radiation sickness on, great looking guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, Otrin's cool, man.
I like how they used the makeup and kind of the healing process. It captured the entire arc, of what he went through. He went from bitter and obviously, hurt, and distrusting to, I'm kind of there, but I'm kind of not there. And then now I was like, hey, you're kind of unique, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. This whole thing would have played out very differently if it were Varen who got beamed up and got the treatment, got the nanoprobe treatment.
Right.
You know? I wonder if this whole thing would have been defused by doing that. But what you need is a change in leadership. Again, we'll get to that.
Right.
Great showdown between Otrin and Varen. I loved how that whole thing played out, followed by this nice scene of the brand new day on whatever planet this is. The light, here's the thing, and I know it's TV, and I know it's made for drama. The kid runs in and says, "Come quickly, you got to see this." And it's only after everybody gets out there that then the clouds break. So what did the kids see before they ran in to tell everybody to come out and look? So, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. But at least we cut to a poignant moment of reflection, a bit about Joe Carey. We get to know more about his personal life, his hobbies. Like, that's kind of cool.
I love the ship in a bottle. Again, if Master Replicas is hurting for ideas, make that one happen. Especially with it should be a puzzle, right? How are you going to do the last nacelle?
Yes.
Right?
I love that.
Yep.
First of all, what happened to the original prop? But second of all, you are on it. That needs to happen.
That needs to happen for sure.
Carey went out with his back unbowed, his spirit undaunted, and his nose unbroken. Respect is due.
I have a quick question for you. It may be quick, it may be not.
Okay.
But I asked you in the last segment if you had any thoughts about how long the people on this planet, and by the way, we're going to keep saying this planet and these people. Mm-hmm. There are things in the script that name them, but in the actual episode, there isn't.
And that's tough to do when we're writing the synopsis because
it's hard to do. Yeah. So, but anyway, we don't know how long ago this catastrophe occurred. I love how we set the stage and say the probe was launched in 2067. Mm-hmm. That's 3 or 4 years after Zefram Cochrane's successful flight of Phoenix.
Right.
We know that is 300 years ago from Voyager's present. We get all of that.
Sure.
That's very cool that it's that specific.
Right.
How long ago did the probe get to this planet and they capture it, learn about antimatter, and then have their disaster? Is it 10 years? Is it a generation? Is it 100 years? What do you have any take on that, or does it really matter?
Well, it's just one of those things. We were talking about this earlier about, when you see a reference like the Delta and you're like, okay, we can take all of the information that we've jotted down in our notebooks and cross-reference all the timelines to see if they fit. Because here's another thing. We know that when Zefram Cochrane launched the Phoenix, that's when we had first contact.
Yeah.
With the Vulcans. Yeah. So why would there be something in Friendship 1's message that seems like we're reaching out there to say hi to who? Because we've already established contact with the Vulcans. So now we're part of this larger intergalactic universe because they would allow us to be able to explore further. It's almost like if they took the Timu version of the Voyager 6 probe. Right?
Right.
And
I got to on that, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, they've already established the relationship with one, as far as we know, in the Alpha Quadrant, one of the most influential species in terms of improving our technology tenfold, 100-fold, probably even within those 4 years when Friendship 1 was being developed. And what happened to the beginning of, not necessarily Starfleet, but the United Earth Space Probe Agency? What happened to the Vulcans? Did they help fund Friendship 1? And if they did help fund Friendship 1, then why isn't there better technology on Friendship 1? Right?
Well, but you know what? I think that's what is so interesting and well played in this episode, is that there is a level of ambiguity. Right? So what we get from the probe is just what we see at the beginning. It's playing Vivaldi, it shows up, and we hear a partial message. And I wrote that down because I really liked it. We, the people of Earth, greet you in the spirit of peace and humility. As we venture out of our solar system, we hope to earn the trust and friendship of other worlds. So that's the greeting that we get.
Yeah.
Now, what we don't know is how much other data, how many other greetings, how many other instructions were built into that. Let me just give the future Earth scientists of the middle 21st century who will launch this kudos, first of all, saying that that is a far better greeting than "we come in peace," which, as David Gerald and many other sci-fi writers have said, that can sound like a threat.
What is it? The Dolph Lundgren movie? Like, I come in peace, you go in pieces. You know, like it's...
It's exactly that. Exactly that. But that message on Friendship One, not an accident by any means. It is very reminiscent of the message that is embedded on that golden record affixed to Voyager 1.
Right.
And Voyager 2, by the way. But Voyager 1 launched in 1977. So let me just give you a rundown here. Look, there are people in our audience who know this by heart, but that record contains to this day, because it's still out there, greetings in 55 Earth languages, along with photos, nature sounds, a map, and the brainwave of a woman in love. And that is an extraordinarily positive, peaceful message designed to share the idea of love and curiosity and community to a potential alien race that may find it. And even if it's never found, or even if it's found well after Earth and humanity are gone, it becomes a time capsule. It is a way to preserve the human voice long after we're gone. And by the way, I think everybody knows that Nick Sagan, future Star Trek writer and son of Carl Sagan, he is famously included in those voice recordings. His voice is the English-speaking voice. And that's just kind of a lovely thing that you have a child on there giving greetings from Earth. But I wanted to share that there is one recording, one of the voice recordings that is in Latin that very closely resembles the greeting that is used on the probe in this episode. Oh. And that one says, "Greetings to you, whoever you are. We have goodwill towards you and bring peace across space." I think that's so nice. And one of the things that is the troubling question here, of course, is about the potential price of exploration, and that every bit of goodwill may ultimately fail in the respect that there are consequences that you cannot anticipate, that you cannot possibly plan for. And this is one of those situations where, okay, you send this probe out there, and even if in Earth language, everything that points to the antimatter reactor says, danger, stay away, do not open, who's to say what this other alien species will do with that information? Great. We understand that it says danger. Awesome. We're going to open it up and use it.
But that's the thing. Do they understand?
That's the thing. Or they don't understand at all.
Right.
So ultimately, you know, the proposition here is stay at home. Because you know that you won't mess anything up if you just stay at home. Or even with the best of intention, the best possible precautions that you've taken, you still can't anticipate what will happen when you go look beyond the horizon.
Right.
And I'm really kind of torn here. You know, we don't spend a whole lot of time on that because we know something happened, but we don't want to devolve into this like finger pointing. Well, your probe said this. Yeah, but we didn't mean this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's the difficulty with trying to like game this out and understand what actually happened.
Well, sure. I mean, we can just, put this under the blanket of probably one of the greatest excuses ever made. You know, it's like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So the road to space is paved with good intentions.
Sure.
Let me put it to you this way. Imagine Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Big fan of his work. Yeah.
He just says to Zefram Cochrane, or whoever is in charge of the USPA program, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Right?
Yeah.
And now, to caveat all of this with, yes, I believe in Star Trek. Yes, I believe in Gene's vision. Yes, I believe in a better humanity. However, I want to take you on a little bit of a sideways journey here, because I want us to look at Star Trek through the lens of critical thinking. right? Very critical thinking, because that's what Star Trek has inspired me to do. I hope it inspires everyone else to do that in some way. When it might be uncomfortable to some, but we have to ask ourselves, why does Friendship One matter in the sense of what does it do for humanity versus what does it do outside of that particular goal? When I was growing up, right, I remember when, say, the Challenger space shuttle exploded, we all, of a certain age, we all remember where we were. You know, it's like when a certain generation says we knew where Kennedy was, we were when Kennedy was shot, right? You know, it was 14. I watched it, you know, on TV with a classroom of friends, and I saw the Challenger explode. I saw the two, you know, the booster rockets split off. And I was wondering, there was a lot of smoke, there was a lot of ash, there was a lot of dust. And I remember on the news months after, they were still finding evidence. Parts of the shuttle landed, entered the ecosystem through the water, through the soil, everything like that. And that was when I was 14. So cut to now I'm 53. And I remember also going back and doing a research paper about when NORAD was tracking all of this matter, all of this space debris, as it just basically is just this giant circular, for all intents and purposes, shield around the Earth of just trash, space trash, right? So I Googled a little further and I'm like, yep, I'm going down a rabbit hole. I got to keep digging and see if this is making any sense to me, and see if I can figure it out why Friendship One is worth the risk of doing what is possibly what we're doing right now. Okay, so this led me to this article at nasa.org. And it led me to another article, and it led me to these two words that made me really, really pause. And the two words are Kessler syndrome. Okay, Kessler syndrome. So I said, you know, you're talking to scientists about, you know, Carl Sagan and Voyager and the probe and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking to the scientists about what Kessler syndrome means. Now, Kessler syndrome represents the idea that humanity's careless behavior, specifically the accumulation of space debris in low Earth orbit, could trigger a cascading chain reaction of collisions, eventually making parts of space unusable for satellites or further exploration. This scenario is sometimes used as powerful as an argument that this is the problem. It's not space itself, but the way humans manage or mismanage environments, both on Earth and beyond. Right? So this is Kessler syndrome. So remember, and let me repeat this, the way humans manage or mismanage environments, both on Earth and beyond. So the argument is space is not the solution for the issues that we have on Earth. We're not going to take our problems out to space to make things better when we can't make them better here. There's something about like Friendship One was like, it's an incredible achievement, of course. It is like focusing all of humanity's needs, hopes, and desires and putting it on one direct course. But what gives us that right? Right? What gives us that right to go out there into space and basically harm or potentially harm other worlds, or litter our own Earth for the sake of creating the stuff that will make Friendship One go, but the byproducts are on Earth just to pollute it even further?
Are you saying that humans are foolish, hurling themselves out into the void without the slightest inkling of who or what is out there?
It's pretty interesting, huh? So, I mean, I saw the argument broken down here saying like the debris crisis reflects the issues of overconsumption, pollution, and lack of sustainable planning that have caused environmental harm on Earth. The further we go this direction, again, based on this argument, the further we go down this direction, the further we get to Friendship One, what is it doing to us? Are we just ignoring what's happening?
Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna take up the counter argument.
Sure.
And which I could just sum up with the words of James T. Kirk, which risk is our business. But I think I think that's not good enough, honestly, because just to say we take risks because, well, we like to take risks and we might learn something, I don't think that really gets at what you're getting at here. The Kessler syndrome, it is very real, and it is a problem, and it is a bit of cleanup that we will have to do for a long time to come.
it's not my argument. This is the argument that I want to present to the audience and the listeners. Sure. And we would love to hear, either your counter arguments or further discussion, of course, on our Discord or on email. Mm-hmm. But the Kessler syndrome directly challenges the notion that going into space automatically represents the progress or salvation for humanity. Mm-hmm. Instead, it reinforces the view that humanity must confront and solve its foundational behavioral problems before expecting space to offer any meaningful solutions. So this is all in caps in my notes. I said, I can't believe as a Star Trek fan myself, I'm going to ask this, but because as Friendship 1 is positing, what happened to that planet, the alien planet that we're talking about, its people is because humanity wanted to reach out into space and say, look at us. Now, is that altruistic regarding humanity, or is it humanity's desire to make contact with other species? And in other words, it's sheer effing hubris.
You make a strong argument. However, I would take up the position that says there may be some hubris involved. There may be a bit of that, hey, look at us. However, our survival as a species has always depended on reaching outward. And whether it was humanity's first steps out of the African plains into Europe and Asia and beyond, that is what allowed the species to grow. Now, have there been terrible downsides to that? Of course there have. Absolutely. And just like our steps into space have also had downsides. But if we're looking at kind of the cost-benefit analysis, okay, we got a lot of space junk that will definitely cause problems for us down the road. Already can cause problems for us. I mean, God forbid you got the tiniest granule that slams into the ISS 17,000 miles an hour and rips a hole in it. Yeah, that's a problem. However, we also have things like GPS satellites that if we were just to decide, you know what, can't do that anymore, and when those fail, we're not going to put anything else up there to take their place. Well, we use GPS. Granted, look, GPS is a technology that came out of military funding and military research, but it is also the thing that allows rescue vehicles to get to the places where they are needed most. And that's also the thing that allows people to potentially avoid accidentally harming themselves by getting into accidents or, ending up in a pileup somewhere. So there is always the positive use of that technology and a good reason to make the argument for that technology to exist. And I agree with you to the extent that Star Trek in this way, as a science fiction construct, is not about going to space. No. It's about fixing the stuff that we have here first that says, hey, if you correct all of those things, then you get to do other cool things like go into space. Mm-hmm. I think we benefit from science being our only self-correcting institution that humanity has designed. Right? So there are other institutions that we have, or other ways of thinking, I should say, other ideologies that are married to whatever the principles are of that ideology, but they don't allow for self-correction. And I think what's nice here is that, okay, Friendship 1 represents a future that the writers of this TV show had not yet gotten to. We, recording this discussion, we have not yet gotten there where we can say, oh yeah, we can send a faster than light vehicle out there to see what's on the other side. The whole idea behind that is that we have a scientific method. We have the ability to be better than the people who were developing this technology 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 50 years ago, certainly 100 years ago. And that doesn't mean that we are always stepping toward perfection. That's what the Borg do. We don't want that. But what we are doing is correcting ourselves along the way so that then the next steps we take and the next steps that the people after us take are just a little bit better. They're a little bit more positive, and they build on the wealth of experience and knowledge of everybody who came before them. And I think that's why we got to give the builders of Friendship One a little slack. And we got to give the people in Starfleet and people in Voyager today, I'm using finger quotes today, meaning the present of this episode, by realizing that, well, we can't account for every possible outcome of a solution that was devised 300 years ago. But what we can do is recognize that we've learned a lot more in 300 years, and we can offer the very best of ourselves to make right what went wrong.
Here's the one flaw in all of this, though, and not their argument, but just in the conversation itself. I would be 100% completely on board with why Friendship One is out there if it weren't for the fact that we already met the Vulcans.
Mm-hmm.
See, so that's the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is that the whole point of Friendship One is going out there to send that message that we are here and we want to meet you. That's the point of the Phoenix, right? Yeah. So we already met you out there. We met the Vulcans, who are supposed to be teaching us how to go out there, right? So what do we need Friendship One for?
Well, but look, the Vulcans occupy their part of space. And granted, they have made alliances with other planets and other species, but I think there's a lot for humanity to learn from that. But there's also the possibility that humanity makes its own discoveries. I think that's okay. So, if we rewind the clock here on Earth 400, 500 years ago, and we say, okay, well, one culture has made contact with another culture. That's great, but that doesn't negate the first one or another one from also reaching out and saying, hey, we're here too, and we want to have our own either trade or cultural exchange or combined exploratory powers. I think that's, well, maybe it doesn't apply to every species, but that's human nature, at least.
Yeah, maybe. That's just the one thing where I'm like, okay, so then Zephram Cochrane goes out, does his thing, meets the Vulcans, and then what? They just disappear and don't help us? And for what?
Maybe. I mean, look, I don't know what you've heard about the Vulcans, but maybe they're not always the kindest.
Reasons we still send robotic space probes out even though we can send people. Robots don't eat. Unless they learn to eat while they're out there and want to eat more. That's how you gets in a star.
All right, friend and friends, we have made, what's the best ship in the world, Norman?
The best ship?
Yeah.
Janeway and Chakotay?
No, it's Friendship. It's Friendship.
Oh, okay. Gosh.
But we know that there are people in our audience who definitely ship JC.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, that's the second best ship in the world. But look, we made it to the end of Friendship One, and as we do, we like to ask each other if the episode holds up and what we learned. Did we learn anything? Maybe we learned things that the characters in the episode didn't learn or did learn. We'll find out. So, Norman, Friendship One, does the episode hold up?
I'm going to start off with a quote, as I am wont to do.
I love it.
All right. I'd like to share a revelation during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply until every natural resource is consumed. The only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There's another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what that is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet.
Ooh.
Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Agent Smith's grand soliloquy from The Matrix. And it bears a great deal of relevance as to why this episode does most certainly hold up. If you look at Friendship One through that lens, like, it starts off as a story about good intentions. The urgentness of Janeway and her crew to right a wrong that they believe that it's not their responsibility, but it's their responsibility now because it was humanity reaching out into the stars, right? This is about optimism. It's about inspiring that type of hope, that type of ability to reach beyond the stars and say, hey, there's another species that we can connect with. That's Star Trek. That's what Star Trek's supposed to stand for. But the people that built Friendship 1, they sent something out that had consequences they could never predict, ever, right? I mean, that's an act of friendship ended up being almost the entire genocide of a planet, of a civilization. I mean, the thing is, like, we don't realize that without the responsibility, without really thinking about what possibly could happen, then that Star Trek optimism can go sideways and very, very quickly. And that's kind of the opposite side of something that we don't really talk about a lot in Star Trek. Star Trek starts with hope. We've talked about that Star Trek also starts with empathy when Star Trek is at its best. It helps us and it inspires us and it shows us that our dreams, our human dreams, can be more than what we can possibly achieve. But we forget about what I brought up earlier in discussion, and that is this quote-unquote Kessler syndrome that proves that if we don't deal with what we're doing right now down here, aren't we just going to take those bad habits out there? Right?
Yeah.
And it's ironic that because this episode is so traditionally Star Trek, because it presents this moral impact, right? That usually the original series wrestled with probably more than any other series.
Yeah.
It shows us that there is a factor in humanity itself that is causing harm to these planets that we want to connect with. It's this weird paradox, right? And it leads me to, what I believe this episode is about and why it holds up is because it's about accountability, right? It's about, basically all I'm saying is, yes, this episode absolutely holds up. And once again, John, Voyager season 7 continues to probably be my favorite season of Voyager, period.
Yeah.
And this episode in particular, it feels like the kind of Voyager in tone that we should have seen earlier in seasons like 4 and 5 and 6 leading to now.
Yeah.
Right. So we've said that before, but that's just, it's great Star Trek. It's Star Trek it's Starship Friendship 101. Right.
Right.
How did you land on this?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And I'm going to take a little bit different approach here because I'm going to save some of what I'm saying for the next part about the message, moral meaning message. But I think just from a production standpoint, this episode is firing on all cylinders. We have a great supporting cast, great performances, really like the direction that it gets out of the way of the story, but then every now and then there's a creative choice or two, like that Steadicam shot that just make you go, oh wow, we're really ramping up the artistry of the show.
And that was Mike Vehar, right?
Mike Vehar directing, and I believe Marvin Rush was still DP on this episode. So yeah, good combination of director and DP. The makeup, fantastic. The effects throughout are great. And I just love setting the scene on this devastated planet. It really works. And poor Joe Carey. Okay. Part of the debate going into breaking this story was, right, Ken Biller gave permission to kill off a recurring character. Who's it going to be? Vorik? Tal Celeste? They settled on Joe Carey. And the problem with killing off anybody like that is as soon as you focus on the character in the episode, you go, wait a minute. Now we're giving all this focus. Now they're going to pull the rug out from under us. And it's too bad that we hadn't built up these characters longer over time, but at least Joe Carey goes all the way back to Caretaker. And I think that's pretty cool that we actually got that much out of him. I wish that throughout the series, we had gotten more of a taste of all of these characters and really expanded the ensemble.
Do you know what would have been a really interesting idea about Joe Carey?
What's that?
See, we keep forgetting that. We don't, but maybe the writers forgot that Joe Carey was chief engineer of Voyager.
Exactly.
And what if he sacrificed himself in order to fix the problem on the planet?
Oh my God.
Right. That proves to them that it wasn't our fault, but we would risk our lives to save you anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, look, you get the writer's hat for that. Yeah, well done. But yeah, I think as a production, this is definitely Voyager firing on all cylinders. I also think that, it does a very nice thing as far as Star Trek is concerned. And what you said, I would also, I would agree, but I would put in a slightly different way. Whenever people on Earth kind of debate our desire to travel in space or to do something really extreme like terraform Mars. How much have we heard about that in the last, 2 decades, 3 decades? So really interesting idea if you have the technology to make it happen. But if you have the technology to make it happen, you have the technology to terraform Earth. You have the ability to make sure that Earth is a better place for Earthlings. Yes, yeah. And that means that, we got to clean up after ourselves. We need to make sure that the steps that we take next are thoughtful and try to accommodate for as many possible outcomes as we can. But here's the thing, that kind of leads me into the next segment here. When you do that, it means you have to rely on good information. And it means that we have to agree on good information. And it means that we have to use the best tools available to us, which would be scientific experimentation and empirical data and leaders who know how to use that and organize around such an incredible endeavor as using our scientific knowledge. So let's get into it here with the moral meaning message. Star Trek loves to look back at humanity's past, being us right now talking about the show or having watched the show when it first came out. And that reminds us of how much we used to get it wrong. We're arrogant, we're ignorant, we make mistakes. And then some alien of the week needs convincing that we've evolved and that we've learned that the barbarians of the 20th and 21st centuries are long gone. Now, that is a very familiar trope in Star Trek, but it works. It's a wink to the audience. It's we get it, we're trying, and we know better now. I'm going to amend that just a little bit, okay? Because the truth is we've always made mistakes, and we always will make mistakes. Even in Star Trek's future, people are still trying to figure it out. We didn't build the first starship and then suddenly become enlightened, not by Star Trek's future history, right? So I propose that maybe we cool it a little bit with the finger pointing at those people in the past. Because honestly, the scientists who launched Friendship 1, they were probably doing the best they could. And let's be real, a 24th century probe could just as easily cause the same kind of chaos on another planet. Tell me, you don't think a Pac-Led wouldn't tear apart a Starfleet data core and accidentally trigger a planetary meltdown? They would. So let's not be too smug about it. And then what happens? The next cleanup crew, they'll be cleaning up after us. And that just goes not just for tech, but for the way we judge almost any decisions of our ancestors, right? Okay, but taken a little more seriously, Voyager's crew is drawn into a situation they could not have predicted. The unintended consequence of an old mission launched with the best of intentions. The same thing is true for the original Friendship 1 team, right? Their goals were peaceful and idealistic, but good intentions aren't a guarantee of good outcome. You can't possibly anticipate every outcome, but you can choose how you respond. The moral thing to do in retrospect is to show those that you've affected that we've grown, that we're not selfishly clinging to the past or pretending we're blameless, but that we're ready to take responsibility for the impact we've had. And look, I know that we've said it a million times before in this podcast, well, I'll just state it here again. Just because you didn't cause the problem doesn't mean that you can't be responsible. And I'm talking about moral and ethical responsibility, even for inherited problems. That is part of the social contract. It's how we grow, is how we'll have to act as we keep reaching outward toward, new life, new civilizations, and then the consequences that come with that contact. But responsibility is a two-way street. The people on the other side, in this case, the planetary survivors, they have to be willing to let that hand be extended. They don't have to forget. They don't have to trust us blindly, but they have an opportunity here to reject the politics of grievance and embrace a more clear-headed, scientifically informed path forward. That's why I love that scene of Seven saying, maybe it's time for new leadership. We can understand why they're angry. That anger is very valid. Their fear is very valid. But if we believe in change, then we also have to believe in reconciliation. Laying down the weapons and letting trust take root, that's the hopeful message at the heart of Friendship One. It isn't just about fixing the past. It's about deciding who we want to be after the damage is done. I hand it over to you.
Now, that's wonderfully said. And we think about the whale probe.
Yeah.
They probably didn't send that to do what it did to Earth. They did it to say, hey, we just want to reconnect with our whale buddies.
They just wanted to talk to their whale buddies again. Their whale pals. Yeah.
Whale pals. But again, that kind of dovetails into, it wasn't such a moral meaning or message. I got what they were saying. And I think I probably said that a little bit more in, does this episode hold up? But sure, morals, meanings, or message, it kind of like, I agree with where you are with that. And it's because we love Star Trek that I think this is something, again, that I just want to bring up for conversation's sake, because we don't usually discuss this in a way where I think we should apply more critical thinking towards. And about boldly going where no one has gone before, let me ask you this question. At what cost?
Yeah. Well, that is that final question for sure. Yeah.
So I think there is a reality in a dimension of realism that Star Trek returns to from time to time that is incredibly refreshing and kind of sobering in a way, like hunting whales to extinction, or mining moons to destruction, or sending out Voyager 6 to share humanity's hopes and dreams into infinite space, and so on and so forth. But in reality, when something that is hard for us a lot to compare our fantasy against, Friendship One was this stark reminder that, I think back in 2001, the symbol for humanity's hope, post World War III and the eugenics wars that happened, 100-something odd years later. Mm-hmm. Friendship One, no matter how noble the intention, did more harm than good. And you're right, John, that wasn't the point. Their point was to do the opposite, to do more good than harm. They wouldn't have known that. There's no way for them to know that, right? But if you don't understand what you're putting out there, I go back to the entire Ian Malcolm quote again, just because you can, should you, right? And that's a very risk-reward equation that probably weighs on the hearts and minds of anyone who wants to push humanity forward. But the biggest issue here is accountability, right? Accountability tests the Star Trek optimism, the Gene Roddenberry vision of when you associate what it means for us to be realistically able to reach and achieve space travel and go into the stars. What is the byproduct of that? There is the arrow that goes into space, and like Edith Keeler said, we'll harness the atom, send, men to outer space, to the moon and beyond. We'll find cures for diseases. Those are all the positive elements of taking that risk. But there are also incredibly devastating side effects that happen. Just like I mentioned the crash with Challenger. Sure. What happens to all that debris that enters the biosphere and the ecosphere? The whole Kessler syndrome that I researched really, really got to me, just because that's just something I think that's not part of the overall Star Trek conversation. I understand why not, But I think that we have to understand that achieving real space travel and achieving the hopes of that type of humanity for us, there is the aspect of Kessler's syndrome that reminds us that it's more science fact that's happening than science fiction. There is the accountability of those that need to see, is their vision actually taking us further out into space, or are they just using space as a blank canvas so that we can forget the problems that we've already done to the Earth? Because space is infinite. It has so many different ways to start anew. But isn't that also kind of a version of colonization, if we really look at it that way? But I want to end on more of a positive message here. I found this poem by S. Tween Nguyen Onstott when I was doing my research. There was an article on nasa.gov, and it was titled Space Debris, regarding the issue with space debris. And I liked the poem because I thought the poem was really, it kind of encapsulates what I'm trying to say here. So Nguyen Onstott says, "The universe is infinite, but space has its limits. Rockets are launching, satellites are orbiting, explosions in space. Oh, what a waste. Fragments go flying and we go crying, space junk we've got, man-made or not. Then comes Kessler, who knows the better? Where things collide, their debris do multiply. Thanks to partnering and NASA's gathering, we look for ways to manage the spray."
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Natural Law.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Tom Kozak, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, and Paul Shadwell. I really hope they worked out the bugs before they launched the sequel, Friendship 2, or maybe that's Frenemyship 2. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.